for an extra fee. Okay, fantastic. Thank you all for coming. Everyone could see me. So, the Seder. The Seder is the absolute greatest opportunity any parent, any educator has with their children the entire year. The one good thing about living in Chutz La'aretz is we get two of those opportunities. And I think we'll even get to what the focus is the second night. Are you repeating yourself? You have to prepare all different things. Well, what we're learning tonight, is that going to help you for both nights? If I don't get there, remind me that I was supposed to get there, because I do want to mention that. But honestly, when I started preparing this class this year, you would look at the schedule last year and say, oh, the rabbi gave this class also. You know, the best ideas, the most inspiring ideas of the Seder. And this year I decided to do something very different with all of you, which is, instead of me sharing my favorite and most inspiring ideas about the Haggadah, I'm going to just bring you in on what I'm planning on doing this year at my Seder. So people who have kids or grandkids that are the same age as my children are probably going to gain the most. My kids are 10, I was going to say 7, but she turns 8 over Pesach, so let's say 8, 4, and 7 months. So there's not too much material for the 7-month-old, right? Huh? Well, I'm not done yet. I'm in the middle of a sentence. At the same time, if you don't have those age children on your table, you'd be shocked how these mechanisms work for yourselves, no matter what age you are, no matter how many decades you've been going to the gym every day, right? Doesn't matter. That the child within is thirstier than we would think as adults, as mature adults. Then we're thirstier than we think for these ways to access this, the core concepts of the Haggadah, which we'll obviously talk about. Fine. The one thing which is for sure, that you got to go into the Seder prepared. And that's really what this is all about. I'm letting you read. I'm just kind of opening my notes of my Seder this year. Some things you might love, great for your kids, great for your grandkids, great for yourself. But if not, you'll get an idea, like, okay, I have to find one element to fit that spot because that's an important fact. I just don't really, I want to take it a different way. That's fine. But be prepared. Don't forget that the mitzvah that the Torah gives us is v'higadata lebincha, that you have to teach your children. And I find it humorous to point out that nowadays it's reversed. Parents have no clue what's going on, but the kids come from school with their large Haggadahs and they're teaching their parents about the Seder and about the Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Exodus, which is not the case. We're supposed to be, so don't let your children outfox you the night of the Seder, right? You got to create a context and a space for them to share. Absolutely, it's a huge part of, either they've been preparing for weeks, so you want to make sure they have space to share, but you also have to make sure that the main aspect is you teaching them, and not vice versa, not because their ideas aren't great and important, but the entire night of the Seder. I'll say it again, it's the most important night for parents to educate their children about Yiddishkeit, about Emunah, so we can't let that go by with their work in school. There's place, and we're going to create place for it, but you have to make sure to have educational moments for your children, for your grandchildren, for yourself, just as important, because that is the mitzvah. V'higadata levincha, so don't let your children outfox them. The only way to make sure the next generation don't outfox us is to come prepared. You're the teacher. You're the parents. You don't walk into classroom unprepared. You have a lesson plan. You have, what do I want my students to come out with? What's the whole class about? If I have to summarize the class in one line before they go, I want to summarize it. What are they getting out of this course, this class? And that's no different. You're going to be spending, a couple hours with your kids educationally, probably only 1 hour, because you have Shulchan Aruch, you have the songs. So what are you teaching them that night? And that's really what I want to anchor down, what the message, for me at least this year, is going to be, and different ways that we plan on executing that message and making sure it gets into their mind, into their bodies, into their neshama, in a fun and exciting and interactive way. So, a couple introductions. Number one, Afikoman present. Who does it? Avi. Okay, everyone does Avi. Okay, we got to rebrand. Huh? Afikoman present. You steal the Afikoman, and if you get it, you get a present.
Everybody gets it.
Everyone gets a prize. I see, right? Everyone gets a prize, right? I think we have to rebrand the Afikoman present. I'm not saying not to do it, because I don't want to be the Grinch who stole the Passover Seder, right? You have to do the Afikoman present, but rebrand it. That the Afikoman present is really a participation prize. Okay, I kills two birds with one stone. For years with my kids, I had the candies. If you ask a really good question, you get a marshmallow, a nasty kosher Pesach marshmallow, but it's fine. If you ask a medium question, you get those half sugar orange things with different colors, which are also nasty, but they don't know. They only have them once a year, so they only remember they're disgusting at the end of the Seder, right? So you could use it again next year. It's amazing, right? But it chocolate chips for like just a small point. But honestly, I'm not doing that this year. I'm finished with that. I find that kids, at least my kids, get too focused on the candy, and they're empty stomach and sugar high, and it just creates too much chaos. So I'm doing this year, as I have found these online, didn't create them myself, courtesy of awesomepesach.com. Okay, so it is dollars that I'm going to cut out before I actually have a bunch of everything that I'm mentioning resource-wise. I have a bunch of copies that you could take, and if there's not enough, you can email me and I'll send you whichever ones you want. So it's dollars I'm going to cut. There's $1, there's $5, $50, and literally this is going to be the money they can cash in for our trip to Toys R Us or for our sitting on the couch on Amazon, whatever it's going to be, right? But it's going to be like an exchange rate. Maybe it'll be dollar for dollar. I haven't decided yet. Depends on how generous you want to be. And yes, you try to make sure that all the kids end up getting the same amount, right?
Can you take that to the bank?
They could take it to your bank. You can't take it. You can't take it to your bank, right? So this is my idea this year, that the Afikoman prize is okay. In order to cash it into the bank, you have to find the Afikoman, then you give the prize to everyone. But the concept is that you're rewarding them. The more they participate, are they going to get a $5 prize or a $30 prize, a $40 prize? Make sure you know what you're giving out, right? But this is all essentially exchange rate for participation. So it kills the bird of not having to give a candy the whole time, and also teaches them that the Afikomen is going to be prized for participation. So that's introduction number one before we get to any content. The second, to rebrand the Afikomen. The second thing, which doesn't really fit into any one part of these Seder, so I'm going to mention it now, is sometimes podcasts or morning shows or late night shows, they'll stop for a moment of trivia. They'll have a little music thing, and we're going to stop our episode not for a commercial break, but to ask a trivia question. So it's great because I've done this before. In different parts of the Seder, whenever you feel you need to kind of get their attention back, maybe it's been a lull, you've been doing a lot of just the Seder parts, reading without having anything specific. So you just say, okay, kids, or everyone around the table, we're taking a break for trivia. Okay, and whoever answers the trivia question, guess what they get? Boom, participation money, right? Afikomen money. And I love questions, for this context, I love questions that don't have a right answer, right? So some of them do, I have a whole list here again, everything here, I have extra copies you could take, a whole list of Pesach-oriented who am I's. Okay, for example, who am I? I'm the last thing you eat before you bench, say the blessing after the meal. There are often lots of fights over who hides me and who finds me. Who am I? It's Afikomen, right? Who am I? The first time you encounter me, I'm introduced to us under a different name. Something to do with cooing and rocking a baby. Who am I? That's Miriam, right? So there are really, maybe Yocheved, okay? But so different who am I questions. Okay, we need to take a break. You just sort of who am I question. And there's other questions that are just more thought-provoking questions. What is freedom? These ones are kind of better for preteen or teen children, or a little bit older already. What is slavery? What are we slaves to? Something that we thought was bad and turns out to be good. Just getting people talking about the messages of their Seder, of the Yetzias Mitzrayim, and how it resonates in their life. Other questions are just just basic trivia questions. Who led the dancing after Kriyas Yamsuf, right? That's Miriam, right? So I have a whole list of questions over here that anytime I see that it's been a lull, I'm going to have these by my side, and obviously I'm bribing them, participation, and it just gets, really everyone loves to get the right answer, whether it's a question that has a right answer, or whether it's a question that just is meant to induce discussion and conversation for a few minutes. Great strategy, okay? The last introduction I'll give, and you'll see this is not really an introduction, it is, but it's really going to be a core element of my Seder this year, which is really, I think this year we have such a powerful opportunity with the next generation to incorporate the reality of the war in Israel and teach our children the message which, in my lifetime, we really haven't had the opportunity to really teach them. The eternal message of the Seder, that the Seder is not history, but rather it is reality. It happened in our past, and it's happening now in our present, and therefore we could predict the future, right? We could ask you don't need a crystal ball in Judaism to know what the future has in store. You just need to know history, because it's happened so many times. The seminal moment, the time that it happened the first time, is what we're reading about now, and it's happening right now, right before our eyes. And you'll see how that message is shaped and incorporated in our presentation of the Haggadah, my presentation of the Haggadah this year. But ways to just very clearly incorporate it at the get-go, and you'll see this. I have this printed. I'm sure you have it printed already. I hope you do. But Rav David Lau, he wrote a special tefillah to be said right before Yehisha Amda for the release of the hostages. It's a beautiful tefillah. Don't just say it. Understand it. Try to go through it before so you understand the words. Educate your children, your grandchildren, your guests around the table, a table about the words. Maybe choose your favorite line and expound about that. But just take a moment to really realize that we're still in our current reality in the matchil begnus, right? We're maschil begnus u'mesayim b'shvach. We start with the hard avadim hayinu b'mitzrayim, and then we finish with the jubilation, the exodus, the redemption. And right now we're still in the gnus side, but we're waiting for the future. So part of the gnus is the fact that we still have over 100 hostages of our brothers and sisters. Set a place around them at the Seder, and say this is Emily. Emily's kind of our hostage in our home, because I met her mother. I just kind of connected to her family. So we always talk about Emily in our home. Set a table, set a place setting for Emily. Talk about her. Teach something new about who she is as a person, as a personality, and pray for her release amongst the other hostages. Another way you could do it, if you haven't already, I just picked these up already. We have a beautiful initiative out of the shul, where all your bottles of wine could have a picture of a fallen soldier, right? So, for example, Yain Yossi. Yossi was a fallen soldier. He has a story over here. And it could be on all your bottles of wine. So if you have all these bottles and grape juice around, you have all these stickers that it's stickers, you stick them onto your wine. You could buy them at, you look at the flyer outside because we're selling them. And it's just it's honoring, so everyone has a different name. Yain Amichai was, Yain, that's the same person. Yain Amnuel. And it talks about who he was, where he fought, and his specific heroism. Every single was 24 different ones. Amongst those 24, they're all unique and different. And it's just a way to not, God forbid, ignore the reality while you're plugging into the Seder. Like, let's ignore the war. Let's just talk about the Seder. Like, no, it amplifies the message of the Seder so much more if you're able to incorporate the current reality and the current war. The first day of Yom Tov, we hope it won't be, but if it is, it will be the 200th day of the war over Yom Tov. So talk about that and what it means. And the Jewish people were in Mitzrayim for 210 years, right? So if we are still in war the first day, you could hope that maybe one day per year, 210 years, the war will maximum be 210 days, hopefully, and then we'll have the Messiah B'Shevach, we'll have the redemption at the end. Talk about your hopes based on the past. And use the Seder as a lens and a perspective to how to see how to relate to the war that we're going through right now. So that, I think, is a very important kind of introduction, and you'll see that I'm really wearing that on my sleeve when I choose how to share and what to share. Okay. Last, I know I said that was the last introduction, but all the introductions are more than introductions, they're important. A good educational piece of advice that you for yourself, and it could be all the same ones that I'm going to present, but you should have 4 moments of education the night of the Seder. 4 places where it's okay. It's my time, and you talk and you interact, and it's going to be interactive. All the moments, all the 4 moments that I'll show you, you'll see they're all it's not a lecture, it's very interactive. Okay, everyone around the table, at least in my home, I have like maybe 3 kids that are going to be sharing things that they learned. So they each get 3 moments, and I'm leading, so I get 4. Right? So that's a long Seder. 3 kids each have 3 moments, whether it's a manishtana, whether it's reading showing a part of the Haggadah that they made in school, or a story they heard about Mitzrayim. So every kid gets 3, and you always tell them tomorrow there's going to be a long Yom Tov meal, and you could have as much time as you want. And there's another Seder tomorrow, so really every kid gets 6, because 3 today, 3 tomorrow, and you encourage them, and you want to say, I want to see every single page of your Haggadah, But at the Seder, every kid gets 3 moments where all eyes are on you, all ears are on you. We want to hear what you have to say. But I get 4. And those 4 moments are your moments to really decide which ideals and which messages, which message, I think that's the real thing, is to boil down the message that you want your child to leave with. We all know as rabbis or educators or parents, when you have a discussion or a class with your kid, if they leave the classroom and this is what my teacher taught me. What did the rabbi talk about? This, one sentence. What did my teacher tell you? And it's clear. That is a class well taught. So the first step for that is for you going into the Seder knowing what you want to teach your child. For me, this year, my message to my children, and it is really, the entire Seder, Pesach, the night of the Seder, really only has one message, Amunah, faith in Hashem. There's different ways of saying it. I remember one year my thing was, Hashem loves you so much, which is part of Amunah. Hashem loved the Jewish people, so he took us out. But there's different ways of communicating and different angles to look at the core message of faith, of Amunah. And for me this year, my thing is going to be that Hashem looks out for the Jewish people no matter what. No matter how bad it looks, Hashem is there, God is there, watching over the Jewish people, and it will end really well. That's the message. Around my table, I am going to have these hung up in a bunch of places. Okay? These signs. Maybe I'll make them a little fancier. I doubt it because I probably don't have time. Very simple. I'm going to have these hung up all around my Seder table. What does it say? Lo yanom v'lo yishan shomer Yisrael. What does it mean? We say it every day in Shul from Tehillim 121, Kapitel Kuf Chaf Aleph, that Hinei lo yanom v'lo yishan shomer Yisrael. The guardian of the Jewish people, he does not sleep and he does not slumber. There's fallen soldiers. Your cousin, I'm going to tell my children, my nephew, is having a Seder in his D9 Caterpillar this year in Gaza, right? So where's God? Let everyone go home. Let the hostages go free. So no, it looks really bad and it is really bad, but don't forget that God is not sleeping through all of this. He doesn't have to wake up and cause the redemption because he's never sleeping. Hashem is here protecting us. We don't know. We can't really see it now. We'll see that we could see it now. I'll present it also, but we could see it in our past because nothing ever in perpetuity happened to the Jewish people. It always ends up. The Jewish people are stronger than we were before the trials and tribulations. So this is my message to my children this year, that no matter what, Hashem, God, is with the Jewish people and watching over the Jewish people. Okay, therefore, my 4 places of education. 4 places of education are like this. So first of all, I like to always start off in a fun way, depending on the ages of your children. I remember I had a principal, actually, in elementary school, where he used to start the classes by saying, let's say there was 15 kids in the class in Ottawa, that's really 3 classes, with grade 6, 7, and 8 were all together, right? They 15. So we say, okay, we have to count together to 15. You're allowed to say one number. You just can't interrupt the other. So it's like a lesson in respect to the other person. So I yell out 1, and anyone can yell out 2. But if 2 people yell out 2 at the same time, you have to start back at 1. So you have to make sure there's an empty space that you could yell it out, and making sure you're not interrupting someone else. So I thought of great. You play that game with the Kadesh Orchatz Karpa. So you go Kadesh. Someone has to say Orchatz. You go around the table and try to get to all the steps of the Seder without interrupting each other. Just a fun way to get things going. Just another idea I had, age appropriate, when you get to karpas, dipping insert your favorite family custom. You're for sure potato people. Parsley, nice.
He's potato.
Classic potato guy right there. My wife is a potato. It's good. We're celery. We grew up with celery. Okay. You dip it in salt water. So you get each kid, again, age-appropriate, grandkids, who's around the table. So the salt water represent the tears that the Jewish people were crying in Mitzrayim, okay? So you get them, charades where you act out something. So you get them to act out why the Jewish people were crying. So maybe they're going to be building a pyramid. Maybe, there's many different things that the Jewish people were going through. So you get them to do charades. It's a fun game. And just at the beginning, to get them going, make sure that they know that tonight is going to be fun. Tonight is going to be invigorating. There's games, there's fun. All the messages to come are going to be done through these same mechanisms of interaction and fun and games. So starting off with Kadesh and Orchatz and Karpas, they're all right at the beginning. So right when the kids sit down after Kiddush, you're playing this game. Let's not interrupt each other. And then you're doing charades. It's like, wow, this is a lot of fun, right? So what's to come? Well, a lot of fun, but also deep and core fundamental messages of who you kids are, who we are as Jews, but through these same mediums. Okay, so the first educational moment. I'm not going to go in order because I think this one, for me, this year is going to define it the most. So I'm not going in order of the Seder with you. But when it comes to the V'hisha Amda, so I'm going to point out, we have the songs V'hisha Amda Lavosenu, which is essentially saying that in every single B'chol Dor Vador Amar Aleinu L'Chalosenu, every single generation the enemies come to try to wipe us out. But V'Hakadosh Baruch Hu Matzilenu Miyadam, that Hashem comes and saves us. So first of all, we're pointing at this all the time, right? Right now, we had horrible attacks in Israel starting on October 7th. And as recently as just this past Shabbos, with over 350 rockets being shot at us, and these things we have to teach them that based on our past, the V'hisha Amda is such a real thing, and we're going through it right now, and we believe that there's going to be, like there are miracles, like there were miracles in Mitzrayim before Kriyas Yamsha, before the redemption. There were many miracles. He talked about those miracles. And right now we're seeing miracles, individual stories of soldiers who experience miracles. On a national level, we experienced a miracle as well last week, and I printed this to show my children because they know that hundreds of rockets. They knew Bubby and Zadie were in a bomb shelter last week, but I don't think they really appreciate the fact that this is more for my older kid, 10 and 8. This is both good for, but how the 350 different rockets were coming. Like, look at that's like 130 degrees. And historically, the Iron Dome has worked between 75 and 85% with success rates. Either Iron Dome misses. And 99% it's unbelievable. Like, on a time where it's never been overwhelmed more than this. I mean, just this morning there was a rocket that went completely under the radar. Israel didn't catch it. 350 rockets coming from all different directions, right? None coming from the sea. That's basically the only exception. All from Iran, from Iraq, from Lebanon, from down here in Yemen, right? All from all from one financial source, but coming from all different places and working with a 99% success rate is truly an open miracle. And I wanted to show this to my children. Because, it's busy, they're in school, things come up. I don't always expose them to all the details of what's going on. They know things are scary, they know things are dangerous. But I want to really show them that this is a little bit of a hint to many things that happened in our past, and talk about the miracles that happened, during the 10 Makos. The entire Nile, the Medrash tells us, the Torah tells us already that the Nile turned into blood. But if a Jew and a Mitzri were drinking out of the same cup, out of the straw of the Jew would come water, but in the straw, the water would turn into blood for the Mitzri. That's a miracle. Were the Jewish people redeemed yet? Did their servitude end? No. Just the first plague. Every plague. It lasted a long time as the story transpired and unfolded. So we also haven't been redeemed yet, just like the Jewish people during the Makkah of Dam. But miracles are happening to us during the redemption process, just like it happened to them during the redemption process. So this allows them to realize that they're the Jewish child, a 10-year-old and 8-year-old during Dam, during Tzfardea, during the 10 Makkos, that they weren't being affected. You see Hashem's interaction, miraculous interaction with the Jewish people before the actual redemption. And this is all part of like my V'hisha Amda presentation. And I'm going to talk about a lot, again, how it's not a linear switch from bad to good, but there's bad and good mixed together all at the same time. Okay, and that is pretty much talking about current realities and connecting it to the V'hisha Amda. My second educational moment, which chronologically will actually be my first, is the moment of Yachatz. Yachatz, Yachatz when you break the matzah. So first of all, I always go over the head with it, because the kids love it. Boom, right? Like and everyone wants to know what's the bigger, what's the smaller. So the smaller one gets put back, and the bigger gets saved for the For the afikomen, exactly. So there's a deep meaning over here because the matzah, and it's really the same. Again, it's the same educational point from a different angle. The matzah, what does the matzah represent? Teach it. We have to remind ourselves and teach everyone at the table. What does the matzah represent? And the answer is, it represents two opposites. It's a symbol for two opposite things. On the one hand, the matzah is what they fed us when we were slaves. So it's a symbol of slavery and servitude. On the other hand, it represents freedom, because when we were leaving, we didn't have time to let our dough rise, so we left Mitzrayim with matzah, and we needed to eat the matzah until the man started falling, once we were in the desert. So it's this double theme, the paradox. We break it in half. We break it in half. In other words, in the very same piece of symbolism, you have the good and you have the bad. Again, it's not linear. It's not like things are bad until they turn good. But there's a jumble together of good and bad, and as time goes on, there's less bad and more good. So that's what we have to, again, educate about the current war. That it's still very bad. We still have hostages. We still have loved ones who are in Gaza, loved ones who are in harm's way. We may know families who have had, firsthand loss, fallen soldiers. Things are very bad. But also focus on the good. Focus how united the Jewish people have become because of these hardships. And again, reminding them that Hashem is always caring and involved with the Jewish people, with the story of the Jewish people, no matter how bad things look. There's this one paragraph, which I have it in Hebrew and in English, I'll read it in English for now, from Rav Rimon's Haggadah, which I think is so powerful. For children, you have to kind of put it into your own words, but this moment that you break the matzah, and the smaller piece representing the negative, we're going to talk about that now. We're going to continue the Seder. But the larger piece is for later. That's for the redemption. And in that same symbolism of the matzah is the good and the bad all mixed together. And it's up to us to find the good even during the hard moments. So he writes like this, beautifully. Yachatz, breaking, represents the moment of crisis, of rupture. Things fall apart. All seem broken and beyond repair. Yet our faith lives on. The faith that destruction will eventually lead to progress and renewal. Sometimes things must be broken in order that they will be rebuilt. In the darkest of times, we must recall the greater process at hand. Already at Yachas, we wait and anticipate for the Afikomen. At the moment of crisis, as the bread of affliction is broken in two, we recognize this rupture as a stage, and we anticipate eating the matzah of freedom. So at the moment of hardship, we're already anticipating what's good, the good things that are going to come in the story. At this moment, at this educational moment of Yachatz, I do this, every year in different stages of sophistication as my kids get older. But I always like to focus on our personal family history. Like in our personally, my family came to Canada in the 20s. And I always remind each kid who they're named after. Named after Bobby, named after Zadie, named after your great-grand. And to teach them that, that at the beginning, for any Jews, when they came to Canada, it wasn't easy. It was very difficult. And the struggles that our grandparents went to. I don't come from Holocaust survivors, but if you come from that family, or family of Holocaust survivors, then you could amplify this message even more of what they went through and rebuilding their life in Canada. If you know about specific hardships, like I know the stories of my family, but I'm not going to share them now because this is for you to fill in about your family, and allow your children to either overtly or covertly connect the dots between it was really difficult for our family and look at us now. It's amazing the life we have. We have grandparents who live in Israel. Three of your uncle and aunts with all your cousins live in Israel, and we have such a blessed home with schools and friends and a community and a shul. But it wasn't always like that. And then, again, either as they get older through kind of more osmosis, or you could start teaching them this overtly. But that's the same story of the Jewish people. The same story of the Jewish people. That it was difficult at the beginning, and it always gets difficult. Hardships come. But then we grow, and it's specifically because of those hardships that we end up stronger than we were before. There's an article that was written many years ago, 11, 12 years ago, in the New York Times by Bruce Feiler. You should read this. Literally, search this and read it. It's called The Stories That Bind Us. And he talks about the strongest family units are the families who create for their children what he calls a strong family narrative. He calls it the oscillating narrative, where things were bad, and because of those hardships, our family, like your grandparents or your uncle, we learned about it, and from those mistakes or from those struggles, we became strong. And the more your children or grandchildren are aware of their family narrative, then the stronger and more resilient children you will raise. And that's really what the Seder is. I've shared this before. My kids are getting a little too old for this now, but I talk about Avram, Yitzchak, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, our patriarchs and matriarchs, and I'll say to them, Gedina and Chaya, you know that today I spoke to one of the great granddaughters of Sarah, and Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. I met their great granddaughter. Wow, like who was it? Where did you meet her? I said, come, I'll show you, and I'll bring her to a mirror, right? So she's looking at herself, and therefore everything you teach them in the Seder and everything you teach them about your family, going back to the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, whenever they came to Canada, all those hardships. If they identify with those hardships, they realize that they could do anything easier than those stories, and everyone has never really lived through something as hard as Mitzrayim, as the 210 years. But if that becomes part of their family background, and you give them more modern examples of who they're named after, and your own family story, and their national family story with the story of Avram, with the story of the Yetzias Mitzrayim, the story of the Haggadah, then it really teaches them to identify on a personal level with everything that you're teaching them. And that is a tremendous opportunity, specifically during Yachatz, when you're teaching them about Gunus and Shavach. The rupture creates the opportunity, creates the redemption. So you teach them about your family struggles in your past. You get personal. When Daddy was young, I struggled with this. Like, however open you want to be with them, but teach them about their grandparents, their great grandparents. Teach them about the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and in turn they get this very deep connection to the hardships of the past, and empowers them to be more resilient and to be more hopeful in the future. Okay, so those are two educational moments during V'hisha Amda and during Yachatz. Obviously, chronologically, Yachatz is first and V'hisha Amda is second. This one I love. I spent some time on this one this year. But to me, this year, we have to really... Oh, one more thing about this family history before we go to the third educational moment. Family history, I have this amazing resource, and I could send you the Word document so you could customize it for your family. But over here is this extraordinary, crazy amount of research went into this. But one of my very close mentors, one of my Rebbeim, he was the head of the Smicha program that I did in Israel, Rabbi Leib Kellerman, if you've ever heard of him. So at the beginning is Moshe. Okay? Moshe taught the Torah to Yeshua to Pinchas, to Eli, to Shmuel, to David, to Eliyahu, to Elisha, these are all documented, who the teacher and disciple is. That's in Tanakh. Once you, Tanakh. Once you get the Mishnah, that's all documented, right? So there's all a list of documented student to teacher to student. And then once we get to the Rishonim and Achronim, he didn't include any connection between teacher to student unless he had at least 3 different separate sources written down in Sfarim, in introduction to books, that say that A learned as a student with B. If he found 3 corroborating evidences documented that one was a disciple, a student, or for the Star Wars fans in the room, a young Padawan of the master, then he put it down. Okay? It goes all the way down, all the way to Rabbi Shach, who is the Rosh Yeshiva Panovich, Rav Kirshemam, who is one of my Rebbeim, to Daddy, Mommy, Adina, Chai, Elisha, and Kayla. Okay? So this is also going to be hung up this year. Like, Mitzrayim, it sounds like, in the olden days. And it was a long time ago. Right? But when you connect it to this, like Moshe was the guy, look, Moshe was over here, and we have a documented source that our tradition, our Masorah, is unbroken. And every single one of these people did? They had a Seder with the person previously on the list. So like, I had a Seder with Rabbi Kirshemam, and now Kayla, Adina, Chai, and Elisha, you're having a Seder with me. And the list goes on. It's an unbroken chain. And our Masorah is so powerful because we could do this. There's no other culture, no other religion that could do anything close to this, going back half this distance. It's a lost chain. We have a Masorah every single year. We instill the hope, we instill the faith. L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim v'hisham d'lavosenu. These core messages every single year the Jewish people relive with their children and with their students. So this is a very powerful, when you talk about your family history and you want your children to identify that, this is an unbelievable, and I'm happy to send it. I have some extra copies, it has my name on it. Happy to send you the Word document so you could put your own name in it, and you could say how many of these names you recognize. Oh, who is that? It's a very fun thing to go through, and so powerful to really bring home the point that Mitzrayim is not so distant, not as distant as you think, as we generally think it is. Very powerful resource. Okay, the third educational moment. For me this year, I'm going to focus a lot on Rabbi Akiva. And there's that story that the rabbis all go to Rabbi Akiva's house in Bnei Brak for the Seder. And a lot of the different Mefarshei Haggadah, the different commentaries ask, why was Rabbi Akiva the host? Right? All those rabbis were great rabbis. Rabbi Akiva didn't learn the Aleph Beis till he was 40. And other rabbis, Rabbi Akiva was one of the greatest rabbis, no doubt, of the generation. But why specifically did the rabbis flock to Rabbi Akiva's table? And the Mefarshei Haggadah explains something so beautiful, which is a little bit of a sub-narrative, which changes, as they say in Hebrew, mishtaneh tmuna, changes the whole picture, legamri. They explain that Seder on that fateful night was the very first Seder after the destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash. Okay? And there's this story, and therefore the Beis HaMikdash, the night of the Seder was always synonymous with the Korban Pesach, with the experience at the Beis HaMikdash. So how is it possible for us to have a Seder without that? You basically took away our religion. The Beis HaMikdash was what we did everything there. So now we don't have a Beis HaMikdash anymore, and do we still have a Pesach? They needed guidance. And Rabbi Akiva always represented one thing for all the rabbis, which is hope. He saw past the struggles. Again, this is really the same theme from a different angle, from the angle of hope and tikva. He saw past what his eyes saw, and he saw a deeper reality on a larger picture based on prophetic prophecies that are in the Navi. And there's a beautiful story about Rabbi Akiva, about this aspect, in the Gemara at the end of Makos. And I wrote a very kid-friendly version of the story. I'm going to have one of my kids, before we read the story of the Haggadah, I'm going to ask one of my kids to read the story. And the story, in short, I won't read the whole thing. I have many copies. You can take one if you want. But they were walking in Jerusalem, and they walked past the place that the Beis HaMikdash used to be. And it was a bunch of rubble. And a fox started rummaging out of the place that used to be the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the holiest place. So the other rabbis, obviously, they started crying bitterly and didn't know how they can move on. But Rabbi Akiva did something unexpected. He laughed. Okay? His students were puzzled, or the other rabbis were puzzled. Why do you laugh, Rabbi Akiva, when our hearts are so heavy with sorrow? Rabbi Akiva smiled and said, my dear students, I laugh because I see hope, even in the midst of destruction. Just as the prophets foretold, the temple, the Beis HaMikdash, may be broken, but the spirit of our people remains strong. These foxes remind me that even in ruins, life goes on. And one day, just as the foxes have made their homes here, we will rebuild our Beis HaMikdash and fill it with light and joy once again. So they this new perspective allowed the rabbis to have hope in the future, have tikva in the future. So this is what Rabbi Akiva represented. So the first Pesach Seder, how do we even celebrate Yetzias Mitzrayim if we don't have the Beis HaMikdash anymore? We're not at the Shevach anymore. We're not at the redemptive state anymore if our Beis HaMikdash isn't there. So they needed to go specifically to Rabbi Akiva's Seder to learn and to reinvigorate themselves with his hope. I also wrote, it's a little vulnerable, but it's okay. I wrote a poem that I'm going to read out loud. It says, by Daddy, I could send you the Word document, and in brackets, with some help from an artificially intelligent friend. So, full discretion. But what I'm going to do is, and before, this is so key, before we read the story in the Haggadah, which is just kind of in Hebrew, right, or in English, whatever, I'm gonna read this out loud, and I'm gonna get my kids to try to guess the rhyming word. So I'm gonna stop at the end of every stanza for them to fill in the words. So, in Bnei Brak, where sadness was all around, rabbis gathered, feeling so down. They went to Rabbi Akiva's place, looking for comfort, seeking some grace. Okay. After the Beis Hamikdash was no more, in Akiva's hope, they found a door. Even though things were really bad, they didn't lose hope. They were never sad. And it goes on and on how Rabbi Akiva is teaching them this concept of hope, that don't be so downtrodden about what you see right now, because look at our history, and we learn that everything will be rebuilt. Okay? And then the last line is, though the Beis Hamikdash is lost, a heavy weight, in Akiva's hope they found a gate. For in the darkest hour they learned a shift in view, a new light returned. So the power of perspective, the power that, when Rabbi Akiva changed their mind about the base, when the fox ran out, he didn't rebuild the Beis Hamikdash like that. Nothing changed, but he was able to allow them to smile and even laugh because he changed their perspective. And then I printed out, I think I may have forgotten the printer, that's okay. A really beautiful example you could find, I can send it to you, you could search for it on Google, the words of Hatikva. My kids know Hatikva, we sing it, I don't think they know what it means, right? Literally the national anthem for the Jewish people, still waiting for Rabbi Akiva's prediction to come true. The Beis Hamikdash hasn't been rebuilt since 2,000 years ago when this story with Rabbi Akiva happened, right? Year one of destruction, around 2,000 years ago. So still waiting for that is our national message to ourselves is Hatikva, lo avda tikvatenu, the 2,000-year-old hope that we've been holding on to, lo avda, we're still waiting for that hope. So to really go through that beautiful national anthem with my kids, line by line, to teach them, on a national level, what we, as religious Zionists, what we stand for, and what we're still hoping for, and connecting it all. And once that's all done, then, I'll probably choose Adina for this one, ask her then to read the story of Rabbi Akiva in the Haggadah with as much emotion as she could put, knowing the background, knowing that this is the first Haggadah, the first Seder after the second Beis Hamikdash, knowing that Rabbi Akiva represents the medicine that all the other great rabbis needed to hear that night, which is the message of hope, which is our message, right? Every single year, the only reason why we're still hoping for, have tikva, have hope for the same thing, Rabbi Akiva, after 2,000 years, shouldn't have we given up by now? No other nation or culture or individual has ever waited for something and still really believed it was coming after 2,000 years of upset, right? The Leafs don't think anymore they're going to make it to the second round of the playoffs, right? Sorry, Josh, if you're listening, right? But that's just not going to, because after so many years, it's just not going to happen anymore. So are we crazy? Are we psychotic? I think Einstein said that
Twice.
Huh?
Yeah, once. If you do something once.
No, he said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing multiple times, expecting a different result. Okay? So we've been every single year, Lashana Haba B'Yerushalayim, Lashana Haba B'Yerushalayim. And every year, we're having the Seder in the ghetto in Auschwitz. And we had Seders all over the world, not to compare Khalil, but in Canada, in Europe, in everywhere other than Israel. And even in Israel, it's not with the Beis Hamikdash. Now there's going to be hundreds of Seders in Gaza. And we're still saying, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim habanuya. Are we crazy? We're not crazy. We are crazy. But we're crazy hopeful. And this is the hope that Rabbi Akiva instilled in us. 2,000 years later, this is the hope that us, the Claymans, are still hoping for right now. And this is the hope that every single generation, going back since Moshe, every single year there was a Seder, going back to the person between the line. At the end of the Seder, they sang and they danced, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim habanuya. It's because of this hope that we're still hopeful. And that's why our national anthem is Hatikva. And so all these educational moments blend together. And I think that this year, Rabbi Akiva is like a really, really powerful protagonist. He comes up in the Seder very quickly, but to really connect to his message and why the rabbis were at his table and why he wasn't at other people's tables, because he was the message that really was needed to hear on year one, and in turn, every single year since then, thousands of years later, that's the message that we need to hear now. I think that's a powerful moment of education as well. The last moment of education, which is a little bit of a different one, but I think it's so relevant and definitely something we need for ourselves, and especially raising the next generation, which is the story of Lavan, right? We randomly bring in Lavan. Bikesh Lavan la'akor et hakol. So the translation that Lavan wanted to uproot everything. But on a deeper level, the commentaries explain that he wanted to uproot our ability, our midah of kol. What does this mean? There's a famous parallel in the story of Yaakov and Esav, right? Yaakov and, in other words, how Yaakov's mentality and Esav's mentality, Lavan's mentality. That Yaakov says, Yesh li kol, I have everything. And Esav and Lavan, they say, Yesh li rav, I have a lot. What is the difference between having a lot and having everything? It's a huge difference, right? Because if you have everything, that means you don't need anything because you have Ezehu Ashir HaMesamech Bechelko. Someone who's rich is someone who is happy with what he or she has, and that's it. But if you have a lot, well, I just want more, right? Because if it's not everything, I want more. I have 2 cars, but I want 3 cars. But if you have 2 cars and you have everything, you have the world, so then you don't need anything more because you have everything, right? What do you give to a man that has it all, right? Right. So that is the mentality. And Lavan, as the secular culture wants to take that ability to be happy with what we have away from us. And this is such an important message because nowadays with the world of marketing and social media, research shows that we're exposed to at least 400, 500 different advertisements every single day. A lot of them is subconscious. You don't see it at the side of the internet, and while you're scrolling or while you're driving on billboards, hundreds and hundreds of messages every single day trying to convince us that there's something we don't have, that we're not happy because we don't have it, so buy it. That's all marketing, right? Creating a need. So the question to the table is there something that you want right now that you really feel you need, but after this, you could really know that you'd be happy without it. Like, it's fine if you have it's okay if you have an iPhone 14. What are they up to now? 15 or 16? 15. So right when the 15 comes out, there's literally lines around the block in Apple. Like, what happened? Your phone broke overnight? So you want it. Okay, but if you don't have it, will we be okay? Yes, I'll be okay. So then go get it. If you want, go get it, but appreciate that you're getting something that you absolutely don't need. You're fine without it. And live your life like that, a different perspective on materialism. Know that there's so much that we have. There's so much, and you can even connect it back to your family story. Right? Before we were talking about who you're named after, you want to know what kind of life your grandparents lived in the 1920s when they came to Canada, only because Canada said, if you come here, we'll give you free land and whatever you can, like what life was like for who I'm named after, and who Alicia was named after, like that generation. You compare, they walk. I love saying the story. A little bit of a halachic rabbit hole we have to get to explain the story. But those tin pans that you like to bake chicken in, but you throw them out after. So there's a story, because do you need to tovel those tin pans if you use them more than once? Right? So they once brought it to Rav Elyashiv, one of the greatest halachic authorities in Yerushalayim at the time, and they said, "Do you have to tovel this?" And he said, "If my bubby had this, she would have passed it down to my mother." And we just buy it, throw it out. Buy a pack of 10, we throw it out. Which is we're not. I do that too. I'm not knocking that, but to appreciate that we live in a generation of so much abundance, and we have to educate our children. Mitigate that a little bit, and to be happy with what we have. We don't have to have everything that everyone else has, not because we can afford it, just because what do we need it for? The more you have, the more there is to worry about, and just to take the night of the Seder as to have a little bit of a different message of making sure that even though Lavan wants to take away our hakol, our ability to be happy with what we have to fight back at that and make sure that we are happy with what Hashem gives us. And not to get new things, but to understand within which perspective, which context that we're doing that. So I've done this before. I had a Seder once, but there was lots of teenagers, at the Seder. It was like more of a communal Seder. And they said that there's a guest that we have, and his name is DJ Exodus, kind of a character that I created. And I went to the next room, and I did like a very lame costume change. I think I took like the gartel from my kittel and put it over my, I don't know, something, and I came back and I did a whole rap for them, okay? And this rap, not me, DJ Exodus, was written by Moshe Friedman. He's a Rabbi Friedman in England, and he's like a brilliant lyricist, unbelievable. So when his song came out, I emailed him. I said, "Could you send me the lyrics?" And he did, and it's so good. It's like this message is unbelievable. And again, I have extra copies. You can take it just to give you one glimpse. I'm not going to do the whole thing. I'm not going to rap it either. But do we have any idea what freedom means when society's adults, children, and teens spend a third of our lives on our screens? Which is, by the way, not an exaggeration. With likes and thumbs up replacing hugs, releasing endorphins in our brains like drugs. And while we mindlessly scroll through our new feed, social media records what we read and sells our data to companies that convince us of what we need, having perfected and designed ways to influence the mind, hoping we don't realize we've been anchored and primed. So he goes on and on and on about, they don't know Egypt is now and here, and it's something we are living through again every year. See, slavery isn't something you just leave. It's in our culture, our minds, and the air that we breathe. And freedom is not something that starts with exactness. It only comes with constant practice. And that's why we don't just talk, we reenact this. The whining, the dining, the reclining, it's not just ritual, it's redefining, reminding us that there's always another hill that needs climbing, always a higher perspective that we've missed, always an inner urge or social pressure to resist. And this is the Passover meaning that we must see ourselves as if we are leaving. So it's like really incorporating so much depth, so much meaning in like this medium that no one expects from Abba, no one expects this from Daddy, no one expects this from the rabbi, but like you get into, DJ Exodus or make up your own name, obviously any silliness, but this is just another mechanism how to teach, a really important lesson which is current and relevant, and it's the only educational. So again, I want my kids to leave. I want them to go to sleep and think the one line. I'm going to repeat it 100 times. I'm going to point to the Lo Yanum V'Lo Yishan Shom, that Hashem protects us no matter what. Don't be fooled by the war. Don't be fooled by the missiles. It's dangerous, and yes, the IDF are dangerous, the hostages, but Hashem is here. We will see it one day. That I want them to go to sleep. That the taste of the Afikomen, that's what I want their message to be this year. There's another message I'm leaving them. So 4 educational moments. 3 are really different angles of the same thing. One's focused on hope with Rabbi Akiva. One's focused on the mixture of good and bad in the redemptive process, the Yachatz, and the Vihisha Amda is kind of what paints the whole picture of reliving the story of difficulties through the perspective of the war in Israel. So that's really it. There's one. I'll just share with you a silly. It'll just be fun. I know my kids will love it. I don't know where I got this from, but just a creative moment, I guess.
Question.
Huh?
What time do you finish the Seder?
So this is again, I'm really developing each one. But each one of my educational moments, I think, is going to be 7 to 8 minutes. I have 4. My kids, I have 5 minutes each. They each have 3, right? So, and if you have more than 3 kids sharing things at the table, drop them down to 2 each. Only because I have 3, and Alicia's probably not going to do it. He's going to do 1 or 2. So, we usually do not go very, very late. I don't know. By 1 a.m. we're done. Right? Not so late. It's not so late. That's the late this year. The ideal time for Afikomen is. So yeah, it takes time. It takes time. If you want to be done your Seder by 9, choose one educational moment. Right? I'm not saying everyone has to go long. Yeah, the kids take a nap. Put them to sleep in the afternoon. Take a nap, and then they're up. 1 a.m. is not crazy. You finish before 12.
Maybe not, but there's lots of time.
Yeah, that's including the eating, a nice long meal, of course. Magid itself, 45 minutes. 45 minutes for Magid, which is where all these messages are. The rest is the meals. Okay, so the end, if the kids are still up, is the songs. Echad miyodeya. That goes on for a long time, and everyone's done. So I have a fun thing. For that, and I'm excited to do this with my kids. Why are we singing that song at the end? It's like a funny little song. One is Hashem, and the heavens and the earth. Ooh, you do that, right? Okay. Fine. So 1 and 2, and every one of the numbers are represented in something in the core Jewish values. 2 is the luchos, 3 is the avos, the patriarchs, 4 is the imos, and it goes on and on. Why are we doing it at the end? Because we're teaching our child that what it means to be a Jew, especially right after the Seder. Have you ever heard of this, the ink blotch test? It's like a psychological analysis where you see like an ink blotch or like a cloud. And like what you see kind of like teaches us something about your personality. Are you looking at the white space, the dark space? Like different people see different things, right? So this is an 8-blotch test. 1, what do you think of? 1, are you thinking of the one vacation you have this year? Are you thinking of the one car that you want? Are you thinking of the one friend that you're trying to get? Is it the one girl, the one guy? What are you thinking of? No, a Jew, especially at the end of the Seder. 1, Hashem. That's what I think about. It's like a knee-jerk association. 1, go, Hashem. 2, luchos. 3, like that's our need. When we hear those numbers, when we see those numbers, especially at the end of the Seder, when you've invigorated them with the munah and interaction and fun about how amazing it is to be a Jew and how much Hashem loves us and cares about us, loyin and yishan. So now you think about it, 1, automatically it's Hashem. So to introduce that idea, I found all these different, I've known them before, like what do you see? What is this? A duck. Or is it a rabbit? Rabbit or duck. So everyone will say different things, right? I have like 5 different examples of these things. What do you see? 2 people, or do you see a vase? Or Kiddush Cup, thank you. Do you see the Kos Shel Elio? Or do you see, I don't know, Elio talking to Elisha? I don't know. Okay, that's a better one. And what's this? A donkey, or is it a seal? See the seal? Right? So all these are, so I have like 5 of these. I'm going to print out. They're going to love it. They're going to be fun. Even if they're tired, they're going to perk up. I'm going to say, see, that's why we're doing Echa Miyadeu. 1, what is it? It's Hashem. 2, what is it? The Luchos. 3 is Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And 4 is Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. This doesn't take any time. It takes 2 seconds, right? And it just is a fun type of game and engagement and teaching them, based on one of the interpretation of the commentaries, this is from the Lekach Ve'Libov, why we are saying the Echa Miyadeu at the end of the Seder. It's to teach them, like, before you go to sleep, don't forget what it means to be a Jew. What it means to be a Jew is when you see the number 1, this is what you think of. When you see the number 12, you think of the Shvatim. Like everything is from the Jewish perspective, and it's just a fun thing that I thought of to engage in specifically. Maybe they'll all be sleeping by then. I won't do this. I don't know, but at the end, but at the end, it's something to think about. And you could again, I printed extras. You could find them yourself. But the main takeaway of tonight's discussion is you want to find educational moments. You want to find your message. I mean, to me, I think this is the message of this year, that Hashem cares about the Jewish people. He fights our battles. He's there with us through the pain, just like he was during the 210 years of slavery and servitude and hardship and genocide against the Jewish people. It all happened then. And what happened? We left and we went to Israel. And the Holocaust was horrible. It was genocide. It was the worst genocide in human history to any race, any culture, and religion. And right after we got Israel. We can't explain that one was worth it to the other. We never explained the Holocaust. But we are objectively stronger post-Holocaust than we were pre-Holocaust. And this war has been going on for 199 days, you could say the night of the Seder. Hopefully it'll be finished by then. But if it's still going on 190 days, 200 days, and it's difficult, and there's been so many losses and hardships and karbanos and soldiers and hostages, but Jewish history teaches us one thing. Hashem is here now. He's not coming later. He's here now. And we will be stronger after the war than we were before the war. That's the one lesson of the Seder this year, using the message of the Seder to teach us about the war that your children, our children, that we are living through this Pesach. It's a unique opportunity, and the level of faith and belief and just invigorating them with how lucky they are to be part of this chain is this year, the night of the Seder, is an opportunity that you won't have again. It's a real. Only for me, exclusive. You could take this, or I could send you, if you email me, I'll send you the word so you can put in your family name. Because this is my family name, but I'm happy to share it. You could edit it yourself. Okay? Any questions?
When do we...
Again, all of this, including all my kids' stuff, because I developed it with you, but this is all with my kids' stuff, 45 minutes. You eat after. And again, if it's too much, so say, oh, I like that one the most. So that's going to be my one educational moment, right? If you have a lot of kids, but you want to make sure that they're leaving with something from you, or people on the round table, that you're coming in with a game plan. No, what am I going to teach? What's going to stick out? Let's see what the Haggadah says, an inspiring story that the Haggadah that I'm using. No, go in find that story beforehand. And know when your educational moment. For me, my aim is 4 educational moments. Maybe I'll only get to 3. You can't be so rigid. You have to play like a teacher in a classroom. You have to know when to ditch things and to let things go. But my plan is these 4 educational moments. Each of my kids get 3. But I think that with this plan, they will leave with the clarity, like, this is what Daddy wanted to teach us. and this year specifically. And again, every Seder, it's a very similar message, because this is the core concept of what the Seder is supposed to teach us. But this year, to really use it as an angle to appreciate the depth and sophistication of what it means to be a ma'amin, as a person, a Jew of faith, during a time of war, I think is a very unique opportunity that we shouldn't let go by without preparation and thought. Okay? Chag Kasher v'Sameach.
So let's say, if I take a copy now.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just fill in